I just did breath work 2 days ago, and I like screamed into the fucking ether, and I imagined snakes were coming out of my dick and going back into my mouth. It's insane.
Kyle Tierman here. I'm in Cape Town.
I was the only journalist in northern Nigeria.
Not an adventure until you get lost in Tijuana.
If you get caught inside by a giant wave, you feel really alone.
I love the adventure of waking up and not knowing what will happen and that being my job.
Thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, dude.
I appreciate it.
Stoked to hang.
Yeah, it was good. It was good to see you the other night performing at MUD. I think that was their first comedy
that show was super fun.
Super fun.
Super fun. Good spot. Good people. Packed out. I definitely want to do another show there again. I want to do like my full solo show there. I think that'd
Really?
be a rad spot to run it. Yeah.
Oh, cool. How far out are you from doing that?
I don't know. I'd probably do it maybe in the fall.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm on the road a good amount, and but yeah, would love to come back and do it. That Gather spot is so dope.
It was great too. I mean, it's been I don't use the word lightly, but it's been a traumatic time in LA. So
Yeah.
I think that having it be a benefit show, you
Yeah.
know, that it was really cool. Like people needed to laugh.
Yeah, for sure.
I was actually earlier that day in the Palisades. Have you had a chance to go through there yet?
I haven't gone through the Palisades, but we were up in Malibu the past week for an event.
So you got to see
And,
all of that.
Yeah, we drove through, and part of Malibu out near Agora Hills was kind of untouched. But then we drove through this area where the rolling hills were just black. Like black.
Yeah.
And then we went to that big kind of modern shopping plaza. I don't know what it's called. Sun Life is there.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah. Right in
Faherty.
Malibu. Yeah.
Yeah, and to the right was like the plaza of shops and people shopping and restaurants and everything. And then to the left, like in not too far of a distance, was Black Hills.
Yeah.
And just death. That's how close it got
so-
to wiping that area
It's
out.
so surreal, man.
Yeah.
Like because it's such a manicured part of the city when it's not burnt. Like the juxtaposition. So the day of the comedy show, I went in there because my aunt and uncle have had this little house there for the last like 40 years. And I used to get mail there. So I was able to, you need a residence pass to go through the Palisades.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I got lost on the way to their house because there were no
Right.
land. All there are is just
Right.
chimneys.
Not even street signs anymore.
But you know what's funny is the most respectful drivers I've ever seen in LA in the Palisades. Like everyone all of a sudden is no, you go first. You go first.
No middle fingers.
No middle fingers. Then the
No
second you
honking.
get out of the Palisades, it's like,
Everybody's
fuck
angry
you.
again.
Yeah.
This ain't the Palisades
Yeah,
no more.
exactly.
The fuck out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the one silver lining of the whole thing, you have nice drivers in the Palisades right now.
Yeah.
So did you used to live in LA?
Yeah, so I lived in LA for 12 years up until 6 months ago.
Okay.
And moved to Austin because I have become the cliche that I've made fun of for years.
Okay.
So I just stepped into the character that I was portraying.
Yeah.
You know, I was going out to Austin a lot ever since like 2019 to shoot videos with people, do shows out there. Started to build a bit of a friend group out there. And then when COVID hit, I went out there even more because a good friend of mine was out there that I shot videos with a ton. And I got to know the area, really loved it. And then I brought my girlfriend out about a year ago for a couple events. She fell in love with it. And just the community is kind of what drew us out there.
It's
You
a
know,
cool
the people.
spot.
Yeah, like I have good friends in LA and I love it here.
Yeah.
But it was much more a move to Austin than it was a move away from LA. You know, I have a lot of love for LA. But I love it in Austin right now. It's a really cool spot.
You got the rivers out there.
You got the rivers out there. There's like the nature is weird and kind of rugged, but it's still pretty cool. We're in hill country outside of Austin. So every day I look out my living room window and I see deer and roadrunners instead of seeing like homeless people yelling at each other.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a nervous system reset.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So
yeah,
yeah,
you're gonna
it's-
come back here and be like, don't feed the homeless people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey,
Even though I did do that when I was here.
I forgot I was back in LA. Shit, that was a deer.
I can't pet that one.
Yeah. It's like the episode in The Simpsons where like they're talking about the future Springfield and they just turn the homeless people into mailboxes. It's like this utopian.
Yeah.
That's great, man. So, you did you start doing comedy in LA?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
What was where did you first start doing open mics?
So
Describe your first open mic.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So I went to UC Santa Barbara for college. That's my last 2 years of school. First 2 years, UC Santa Cruz. And I did comedy videos in college, but I was always too scared to do stand-up. Moved to LA. I was a PA for a while, production assistant on different commercial shoots and music videos and things like that. And I jumped into an improv class first. That was my first time on stage ever, was doing improv. And then I would go to shows, like stand-up comedy shows, just to like see, because I was as a fan and to see what people were doing. And I had came into LA with a couple of like silly videos under my belt thinking I was hot shit. And then I got to LA and everybody had that and also was touring and performing and had their name in lights on the improv sign. And
it immediately makes you feel small.
yeah, I felt real small. Yeah. Which was cool because I have a very unhealthy sense of competition from being an athlete my whole life. So I kind of felt this like urge to do better. And that's what brought me out to watch shows and see, you know, all the people that were a couple classes ahead of me and what they were doing and how they were doing it. And I went to this one show at a place called the Clubhouse, which used to have a location kind of east-ish LA, towards Silver Lake, I think. And they did a show, and at the end of the show, they said, okay, we're going to do an open mic, bucket spots. So everybody put your name in a bucket, and if we call your name, you're up next. And everybody that gets pulled out of the bucket does 1 minute. You get 60 seconds. And I felt this like tingling heat in my body. And I was like, fuck, I'm scared, but I think I should do it. 1 minute? Am I going to be the worst? Yeah, I am going to be the worst. So I put my name in the bucket. They pulled my name. And I didn't have any material. So I looked up online, like, some news headlines of what was going on. And
how to write a joke.
Yeah, something like that. And
ChatGPT.
I wish it was around back then. I would have had a much better set. There was some news article about John Hamm wearing sweatpants while he was walking his dog. And that was like headline news. God, I miss 2019. Yeah. When that was the headline news.
Yeah. It was a slow year.
It was a slow year. So I made fun of that for some reason. And it's something about his name and how I only like celebrities with names that I can eat. You know, Fiona Apple, Jerry Rice. So yeah, not the best material, but like,
but the structure worked.
That was the beginning,
yeah.
Right? And from there, I kept going back to open mics like 3-4 times a night for 2 or 3 years.
3 or 4 times a night. So you just go hit all around LA, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you improve quickly? Like, how long did it take for you to stop bombing?
So, I think I got better faster than most of the people around me, because of the practice that I kind of put into place during those formative years. I would keep a spreadsheet during my first like 2.5 years, and I would track every open mic that I did, how long the set was, what jokes I did, what went well, what didn't go well, and then any like additional thoughts. And I would log that in this spreadsheet until it had like 300, 400 open mics. And I would study it and I would listen to the set back, and I really like put in a lot of work. So I think in those first 2 years, I personally think I grew like 4 years.
Right.
But bombing, people talk about bombing sometimes, and in people's minds, it's like you're doing so bad that people are like booing you, and it's terrible. And yeah, sometimes that happens, but in my opinion, bombing, especially when you're starting, is part of the process of becoming comfortable with silence, because you can't make a crowd laugh nonstop uncontrollably for an hour. You can't do that for 5 minutes. The best comedian in the world, if you give him 5 minutes on stage, there's going to be moments of silence. And when you're just starting, that's super uncomfortable. And you're also not really good. So your jokes are not going to get laughter a lot. So you're going to have more silence. So it was a good process of learning to be comfortable with that. And, reminding myself that it's not always going to be like this,
The spreadsheet thing's really interesting. Last year, I went to Burning Man with my girlfriend. I've been a few times, but there was a morning there. I woke up early one morning. I was just walking down the playa. Have you been to Burning Man?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I see these guys running, right? And they all had numbers on them. So it was clear that they're running some kind of marathon. So I get to this this station where they're handing out waters and stuff. And they're like, oh, it's the Burning Man 50K, right?
Whoa.
So it starts at 5 a.m. and it's a 50K. You run Burning
50K?
Man. It's a 50K.
Dude, that's a marathon.
It's more than a marathon. It's 32 miles.
Wow.
Yeah. So I got back to camp and I told my girlfriend I'm fucking doing this next year. So right now it's Shane from Mudwater, me, and our buddy Kevin, who's a fucking savage runner, and we're all training for this ultra.
No way.
And what the brilliance of Kevin is that he has a spreadsheet of all of the runs that he is doing and how he's feeling after the runs, like very similar to your early comedy sheet. And he's been doing this for years. It's like, so he's had this year over year spreadsheet of all of his workouts, and he sent it to me. And I was like, this is such a great anecdote to feeling like you're not improving. Because he has all this evidence of this work that he's done, like you did in your stand-up specials, where you like, it's clear that you're putting in time. And I think that humans, we all have this sense of, or so many of us have this sense of dysmorphia, where like, even if we've been at something for a really long time, we feel like, oh, I'm not getting any better.
Yeah.
I suck. Like you're your own worst critic.
Totally.
So to have a spreadsheet is like evidence against that voice.
Yeah. That's dope. And are you keeping your own spreadsheet too?
I'm keeping my own spreadsheet. Cool. I just started and it feels good.
Have you ran a marathon before?
I did one once years ago, and I didn't really train properly for it, so it was more just about finishing it.
Yeah.
But so this isn't new for me. Cool. Like I've been an athlete my whole life, surfed, like can do these kinds of things, but I've never trained for any athletic event like
this. 32 miles is a hell of a distance.
Yeah.
That's
and I want to like run it. You know, I want to actually pull it and not just be dead by the end.
Totally.
So it's a fun thing. I'm crushing audiobooks.
Cool.
Bro, I just got through Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. You read that one?
No.
It's so good.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Who's it by?
Gosh, I shouldn't. It's a fiction about these two gamers, and it's just a story about their friendship.
I got to get back into fiction. I grew up reading. Reading was my video games.
Okay.
I didn't play any video games growing up. I had a stack of books next to my bed every night. But in recent years, I've been in this like nonfiction hole, and I really want to get back into fiction because when you read a good fiction book, it's better than any movie.
Yeah,
and
it's so deep.
Because more can happen on the page because your mind is limitless. You know, so that's really cool.
It's such a deeper experience, and I think that we're. I mean, this gets into the just obsession with self-improvement, which has given way to the nonfiction, better yourself at all costs idea, where like people think that they're wasting time if they're not self-improving, not realizing that like if you can just update your stories of the world constantly, that's I think a really good way to be spending your time.
Totally.
Just improving your creativity. So did you, before you started writing stand-up, you were writing the sketches?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it all started with video content. In junior high, we had a little handy cam, and we would shoot silly, like quick sketch type things. Yeah. Kind of like Jackass, but more silly.
Sure. It influenced a generation.
Totally.
CKY, a lot of shopping carts went missing.
Yeah. Oh, I had a shopping cart in my bedroom closet.
It was
until I was like 18. From
yeah.
like 13 to 18, there was just a shopping cart.
Other kids had skateboards. You're like, oh, you got the shopping cart.
I had a traffic cone. I had like all this weird shit.
Yeah, you just keep the crutches like by your front door.
So that turned into more silly comedy things in college. The Lonely Island was massive when I was in college, and Andy Samberg and those guys.
So brilliant.
They were a huge inspiration on us. So I was doing, and I when I transferred to Santa Barbara, I got into the film major. So I started getting involved in student films, and then I started producing and directing independent like music videos for local hip hop artists in the Santa Barbara area. Okay. And I started to think to myself, these guys are good, but I can rap a little bit. I love hip hop. Why not just try to write a track for myself and then make the video, because I know how to make the video. And so we did. So we made a couple of songs in college. One was called Bike Path Love, about falling in love on the college bike paths. And then another one, because all the girls in Santa Barbara would just ride bikes around in bikinis all the time, and it was really hard not to fall in love. And then we did another one called Walk of Shame. my senior year. And
Santa Barbara, great for
and
Isla
Santa Bar-
Vista.
great, yeah. Both of them popped.
Yeah,
and
it's
got
going in Isla Vista.
Yeah. And got like heavy play at frat parties and everything. And so yeah, that was my first comedy writing experience. And then writing stand up was much different because you have to actually be yourself. You can't just write rhyming punchlines you know, the whole time. Yeah.
Were you always physically expressive as a comic? I was writing down like Dane Cook, Jim Carrey.
Cool.
Like you have those were associations I had with your stand up.
Cool.
Was it early? And I think Andy Samberg, that was the one I missed.
Yeah,
but I'm like, for sure, that's probably even a better comparison. Was that from the beginning? Were you a physically expressive comic from this?
My mom raised me on SNL.
Okay.
And the SNL era that I grew up with was partly her era because she would replay it for me. So that was like the Chris Farley, the Chris Farley, Adam Sandler era in the early 90s was when she was like, I guess, coming out of college. And then I grew up with the Will Ferrell era with Jimmy Fallon. And so all those guys were huge inspirations. But my Mount Rushmore for comedy actors, not necessarily stand-up, is Chris Farley, Will Ferrell, Sacha Baron Cohen, and Jim Carrey. So those are kind of like my four biggest inspirations. Yeah.
Okay. And has the physical comedy changed at all? Like, have you learned more about it? Because I think that what I'm getting at is I think that a lot of physical comedy just comes off as very natural to the audience. Like, oh, this person's just doing this. Are you thinking about the movements on stage, and has that evolved over the years?
Yeah. So to get philosophical,
let's do it.
I came up through Groundlings, which is an improv sketch comedy theater in LA.
So that was the improv that you were doing.
That was and UCB. UCB is a different sketch and improv theater in LA. That was the first theater I went through, and then I came up through the full program at Groundlings right after. Groundlings is much more character driven, and when I first started at Groundlings, the notes I was getting were like, "Hey, rein it in a little bit." Which is actually a good note. It's much better than being told, "Hey, you need to pick up your energy a little bit. We need you to go bigger."
That's right.
They were saying like, "Hey, come down a little bit.
Yeah.
Like figure out how to use that energy without like flailing."
Yeah.
You
Pump
know?
the brakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that kind of informed my physical comedy style to where when I get physical on stage, it's in like a much more controlled way than it used to be, and it's much more like intentional. Like if I'm doing a character or an act out, as we say, of a person or a character, an impression on stage, it can be high energy, but within like a constraint, so it still is real. So instead of like flailing around as Joe Biden, I'm gonna do the real mechanics or whatever it is that represents that character or that person. So I kind of I try to let the energy kind of whatever I'm doing, of whatever person I'm becoming in the bit, I try to let that energy kind of naturally flow through me, and I don't pre-practice or pre-plan a lot of physical movement. It kind of just comes from committing to the reality of being that character.
But it's a lot about reining yourself in. Like, I think that there's a difference between using the movement to improve the joke and using the movement to like hide bad writing.
Right,
you know?
exactly.
I think that's the difference.
Totally, yeah.
And I think one comes across as incredibly confident and one comes across as incredibly afraid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And you can tell.
Yeah.
You can tell for sure.
It's such a fine line though. That's fucking fascinating. And so how many years were you doing Groundlings?
Groundlings, the full program I think was 2 years.
Okay.
And UCB I think was 2 years as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe 3 for one of them. Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. You said that in the first bit that you did, it was a topical bit. So that seems like very much in your DNA that you're talking about things that are happening now. I think a lot of people would define you now as like, oh, it's the spirituality. He jokes about the whole spirituality movement.
Yeah.
When did you, and I think that you've hit into that like Jim Gaffigan's hit into food, you know,
Right,
like it's
right,
just an
right.
endless mine of great jokes. Do you remember when you first noticed that this thing was happening and that you could make fun of it?
Yeah. It's been an ongoing. I don't think there was really a moment where that happened. I think my output of material that's related to kind of new age spirituality or mindfulness and all the subtopics within biohacking, diet, festivals, crystals, all those subtopics within that bigger container. My output with all that stuff evolved as I evolved and as I got more into all of those things.
Right.
And I've always been, a pretty spiritual guy, I guess. My mom was a deadhead. She brought me to shows when I was little.
Yeah.
I had my own kind of like spiritual practice growing up and still do, but it's evolved over time. And the more and more my curiosity drew me to different elements of that spiritual space, the more like absurdity I saw and the more love I had for those things too.
Right.
And thus the more material I produced that related to all those things.
Sure.
And I'd say a period of time where it kind of clicked into a higher gear was 2019, 2020.
As did the whole movement.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm totally
It
part
was
of that.
like minor league baseball before then, and all of a
Absolutely,
sudden it's
yeah.
like boom, like it's no longer a left thing.
Yep.
It's no longer a California thing. This is people on the far right are doing breath work and fucking owning it.
Yeah. And
they would be making fun of their future selves.
Right.
Like
Exactly.
That's like when the whole thing of like, fuck, like my past self would be so disappointed in me right now.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
let's bring me the ayahuasca in the journal. I'm ready to reflect.
Totally.
And then you just started bringing more of that into your stand-up? Like, did you feel like you found your, because you very much have an audience now. Like, I think there's a broader audience, but I mean, I'm not super familiar with everything you've done, but it feels like you have a very die-hard core audience of people who are into this shit, and you're bringing light to it.
Yeah, which is a blast, and I love to do that because I like to I love to be self-deprecating because I believe in some weird, wacky shit. And I do some weird shit on a day-to-day basis, for sure. I just did breath work 2 days ago, and I like screamed into the fucking ether, and I imagined snakes were coming out of my dick and going back into my mouth. It's insane.
Yeah.
But
It's crazy. I've done the same thing.
right?
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. Yeah. A little hot. But I also hope that my intention lands of drawing people into this space a little bit, or at least like encouraging curiosity about different things. I think people have such a lack of curiosity today because we're told so many things by people with strong opinions, whether it's in the media or celebrity or whatever, and we're just given opinions and we're quicker as a culture to side with an opinion, and I think it's creating this lack of curiosity, and so I hope that more people will be curious, and that's a big part of what I do too. Is if I do a video about ayahuasca or about psychedelics or about transformational music festivals, maybe somebody will be curious enough to Google the shit, learn about it, and then maybe that'll catalyze an experience for them that could potentially be life changing.
Right. So I wanted to ask you about this because it's always funny to me how quickly people's politics shift when they move from LA to Austin. Which is just a reminder that like we pretend to give a fuck about all this stuff, but really we just want to be liked by our friends. You get the right friend group, and you're like, fucking Nazis, right? Like they had some good shit to say. Like, they were
Did
efficient.
you ever really listen to them?
I mean, they're
good organizers.
Yeah, they were on time.
Yeah, always.
How do you inure yourself from tribalism? Like, because I've noticed this. Like, you do videos that make fun of the left. You make videos that make fun of the right, and it's all tonally very maybe this is cliche to say, but like loving. Like I think your intention does come across that you're not mean-spirited as you're talking about this stuff. But it's fucking razor sharp, really funny comedy. But I noticed that you maintain a certain distance from it.
Yeah.
how do you, is that conscious, and how do you inure yourself from tribalism?
Inure is a great word. I just want to pause for a second and
We can do it.
reflect back on you for
I have a little words.
an incredible choice.
I have a little words jar downstairs. So
it was inure yesterday's.
Inures was a while back. Okay. Truculent was yesterday.
Ah,
you know truculent?
I do not.
Truculent is
Succulent, but for trucks.
Yeah, it'd be an angry succulent. So truculent is easy to provoke anger or easy to react in an angry, like in a truculent tone towards me.
Cool.
But I do this thing. You might appreciate this as an organized athlete. So if I'm reading a book, I do the Kindle thing. There's a word I don't understand. I'll look it up. It'll tell me, and then I have a journal next to me when I'm reading. So in the back of the journal, I have all these words.
Oh, nice.
I have all these words and their definition.
Nice.
And then I transcribe it on these little index cards, word, definition, flashcard, and then I have a little bucket of words. So then every day I got the word, and then that night I would write the word, because it's just a matter of like writing the word enough times that then it's in there. Yeah. But that's my little process of learning new words.
The best kind of psychotic.
Mm-hmm.
That's
totally.
It's either like psychotic people either murder people and eat them and store them in the bathtub, or meticulously write down words they don't understand and force themselves to understand them.
I already feel a sense of psychopathic brotherhood for you.
I'm glad you're the latter.
Yeah, like we could easily have gone off and started murdering
for
fools,
sure.
but we're just like, let's do something more fun with it.
We could have some feet in the
I'm
freezer
gonna learn
right
some
now.
fucking words with this energy.
No truculent. That's great. I love it. My version of that is when I see a word I don't understand, I pause and look it up and try to learn it, and then forget it most of the time. But at least I'd give myself a shot.
But no, that's the next. For so long, I was fucking frustrated because I would learn new words and then I would forget the new words, and all it takes is physically writing it down 2 more times. You set up a process for yourself, and then it's in there.
Get it.
It's so amazing how quickly just like that next little thing allows you to remember fucking way more.
Well, and writing stuff down is such a great way to cement it into your brain.
Yeah.
So, okay, your question, how do I, the distance.
Yeah, how do you maintain distance from tribalism while being so caught up in current events?
Sure.
Right? Because most people who don't want to get caught up in that just tune out the news, which isn't a bad philosophy, but you're on it.
Thank you. So I appreciate that sincerely. So I never used to do politics until 2020. And then when COVID hit, I started paying attention a lot more to what was going on. And I saw a lot of absurdity. I saw a lot of dumb shit from multiple sides, but slightly more from the side that was saying you should wear a mask outside by yourself, right? And so I kind of leaned that way, but I started doing these videos where 2 people would have an argument, and they would be from 2 different sides, like people who wear a mask versus people who don't wear a mask, and then a third guy would come in and like break it up, and it'd be like a silly, cute ending. So 2020 was a real learning experience to figure out my perspective toward things. So now when I'm doing topical content and I'm structuring a video or a stand-up bit, or I'm trying to figure out what my perspective is towards something, it's simultaneously a conscious and unconscious choice to where I land in a position where I can comment on something from afar without voting for that thing, without like supporting that perspective or either side of any aisle. Because I naturally consider myself politically homeless. I don't like anyone in politics really, except like Bobby Kennedy, and he's not a Democrat or Republican, so he's kind of like the closest thing I have. But I've landed in this spot where I can see the absurdity of tribalism, and I can see it pretty clear, and I also think that maybe in like this meta way, not being part of tribalism is its own kind of tribe.
Yeah. You're so nonconformist, it becomes a conformity.
And it's not like a non-participation thing. It's not like an ignorant, I'm not gonna play favorites with anybody. Like if we listed out all of the issues right now, I would fall on one side or the other for every single issue. There aren't really any issues where I'm just like, I'm in the middle.
Right.
But on the whole, I am kind of in the middle.
Right.
Because I'm split on so many different things, one way or the other.
Right.
And that's just natural. And I do sometimes have ideas for videos that I think could be really funny that are a bit too far on one side or the other. And I don't want to make divisive content. I just don't.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Yeah.
And so when I have video ideas that fall like super far right or super far left, it's rare that I'll make those.
Right.
And I'll more likely pull it back a little bit into something that fits my what's the word? Fits my not style. Whatever, we can use style that fits my comedy style.
Sure.
And won't make a bunch of people angry. But sometimes I will make a bunch of people angry. Like I did this video, Kamala's word salads.
Yeah.
During the last weeks of the election, because when she speaks in run-on sentences that don't make sense a lot of the time, and so does Donald Trump. But I made the video about Kamala, and it was a tough decision because I could have done it Trump and Kamala. I could have done like Trump's nothing burgers with a side of Kamala's word salads, right? Or I could have just done Trump, but I decided to just do Kamala. And the reason for that is because I truly felt called to add that to the collective reflection of what was going on during the campaign trail, because Trump, people were already talking about Trump being crazy, and people have been talking about him with his speeches that mean nothing and his run-on sentences, and it's made fun of on every single late night talk show, and it's made fun of by every comedian that does a bad impression of him on social media, and it just felt overdone and uncreative, and it felt like it wouldn't have been creatively fulfilling. And, and the Kamala version just felt a bit more fresh, and like I was kind of adding to the overall balance. So anyways, that was a word salad, but I hope it gives you a bit of an answer.
It does, because what I'm getting at is, the term audience capture? So people, like, the difference between the olden days, right, when it was just TV networks, advertisers, the problem with that is the news would not cover the bad things that the advertisers were doing. Right? So there's that blind spot in the news. If ExxonMobil's doing the ad, they're probably not going to be covering the oil spill in as great of detail, right? Because that's funding the network. So there's a lot of awesome stuff happening now, right? With like Substack, with paid subscribers. But what can happen there is that you have a large portion of your audience or a person's audience that is politically on one side or the other. And then the creator starts to cater to that audience, which is its own form of self-censorship.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
So I think you've done a good job at not catering or not falling to audience capture.
Well, I think I have too, and I think that's severely limited my growth, to be totally honest.
Totally.
Like,
for sure.
But that's a sacrifice
go
that
far
I kind of
right.
chose.
Go far right, bro. Fucking do it.
I see that lane.
Bro,
Trust
you
me.
want to make some money? You want to make some real fucking money?
Dude, I could be selling so much colloidal silver
Dude,
right now.
I know a guy. He's got these Alex Jones
I
pills.
can sell meal prep plans and bomb shelter jackets.
Yeah. A lot of
there's a very clear lane there.
Copper wires that you
Totally.
can. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Brent Pella, 5G.
But yeah, so now I see, like, I look at my audience and like from the outside, some people compliment me on audience growth and I appreciate it. But from my perspective, it's horrendously slow, but that's kind of become something that I'm willing to accept because my style of content is not hyper attractive to one swath of people. It's somewhat attractive to multiple different groups and a diverse range of people. And it's hyper attractive to people like me.
Right.
So people like me hopefully will find it at a faster rate. But at the end of the day, the integrity of the work is what's most important.
Right.
Yeah.
Has that always been the case for you? Like, do you because you, by having to do bits about both sides, right? It forces you to take on that perspective for as long as you're doing this sketch and be like, okay, what's the best possible argument I can make for this side and then for this side. And I would imagine that's more satisfying for you creatively rather than just being like, oh, how can I get this side of the audience off? Like, right? Because it forces you to check your own assumptions.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. If you're going to do a COVID mask bit, like, what is the argument for the mask person? What are they going to say in the sketch, right? So it forces you, even if you don't fall that way, it forces you to inhabit that space for a little while, which I think is a really healthy practice.
Yeah, I also, on top of that, when I'm doing political specific content, I try to lean away from anything that's going to come off as attacking or like insulting. You know, comedy thrives in generalizations. All bus drivers are X. Yeah. When all liberals do blah blah blah, right? Like it's a funny hook, and it paints like this generalizing image of whatever the group is that you're mocking. Whenever I am working on a video that is kind of offering a mirror toward the absurdity of one section of the political aisle, I try to avoid like being overly insulting because I don't think the message comes across the same as if I were to still make fun of those people, but it's like punching up almost so that they can see the ridiculousness of themselves while also laughing at the thing and not feeling super offended. There's always going to be motherfuckers that are offended. So I don't really care about offending people. What I do care about is getting the message across without the people the message is about completely disregarding it because they think it's an insult, right? And I can give you an example of that. I did a video a few days ago, or maybe a week or two ago, about I played like this kind of conservative dude who's like super stoked on everything that's happening right now, and he busts in the room and he's like, "What's up, bro? We're back, baby! America's back, dude! Woo! Ah!" And makes an eagle sound, and he's like, "Dude, Daddy Trump changed the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America, dude. About to get the Great Wall of China is going to be the Great Wall of Tom Brady's. What's up, dude?" And he's just like super amped and stoked on America, and that's to mock all the conservative people who won't shut the fuck up about everything, and are almost like making themselves kind of blind to some things that aren't really great. Like let's it's mocking a character type in a way that kind of conservative dude who is that way would be like, "Oh, that's me. Damn, he got me. He totally got me." Right? And they can laugh along with it.
Right. I saw that one. And then you have the straight man sitting on the couch.
Yeah. Right.
So let's break that down a little bit. What's the role of the straight man in that premise?
In that premise, the role of the straight man is kind of to be...
And for people who are... It's not straight like he's not gay.
Yeah. Straight as in like not the hyper...
Not the outrageous
one. Right. In that one, you know, the straight man wasn't even like a liberal guy. He was just kind of a neutral guy who was just like, "Yeah, dude, all right, relax."
Yeah.
What? I don't think that's right. Like, he was very much representative, I hope, of like the collective people, regardless of your political leaning, so that the outrageous guy looks outrageous no matter who you are. Another example, maybe this is a little bit better because it's a bit more specific. Another video that I did recently was... when DEI ruins everything, because all you hear about now is how DEI is the root problem of everything that's wrong with society. And so similar character dynamic, one guy played a guy who thinks DEI is the cause of rising egg prices.
Ruins everything. Oh, that's fucking
DEI
funny.
is making planes fall out of the sky. He trips over the couch and he's like, fucking DEI, dude.
That's great.
And that one might be a bit better of an example because this huge overreaction to DEI is like wild to watch. And I'm not saying it's all wrong. For sure, let's look into anywhere that DEI might not be serving the best interests of people or companies. I don't fucking know. Totally. Let's look at that and cut it out where it needs to be cut out and keep it where it's doing well and whatever. But the video was intended to show the absurdity of
Sure.
people who, without hesitation, will be like, yeah, fuck DEI.
Yeah.
Get it out of here. No
Yeah.
matter where it is, no matter what it's doing. And it's
Yeah.
like, all right, bro.
Yeah.
You live in Texas? Hey, man, you know your governor's in a wheelchair? Hey, dude, you know some buildings at government offices in Texas need a wheelchair ramp? You know why those are there? Motherfucking DEI, dude. Okay? So, so anyways, it wasn't to comment that like all DEI is good or even that all DEI is bad. It was much more to frame, to generalize one person as a character to show the ridiculousness.
Stand-up, I think, more than just about any subculture I've ever seen, is very open about status and where you sit on that status ladder. Like, I think that in most parts of culture, that status ladder is much more like, it's seen, it's known, but it's not talked about. Whereas in comedy, it's like, oh yeah, he's bigger than me. Oh yeah, she has this, which means she's higher status. And I mean, even like, oh sorry, you got bumped because this bigger comedian just came in. Like, from the very beginning, you kind of know exactly where you are on this ladder. And I think for a lot of people, like, what that does, just being constantly at the forefront of your mind, it can make you feel pretty unwhole, right? Like, you're like, fuck, I am not whole, but I need to get high status in order to feel whole, which is why I think psychologically, if you can find, a group on the far right or on the far left who will love your shit, that's the road to then going after that perspective and not like holding it back out here.
Yeah.
Do you, this is a very kind of like spiritual question, but like, do you feel whole in yourself? And does that at all like help you hold the perspective of not trying to placate one political side or the other?
So when you say whole in myself,
like, do you
I have
feel
a couple
good
holes.
about where you, a couple, do you feel good about where you're at right now? You do?
Yeah. I think I have this unyielding thirst, like this unyielding curiosity, and always will. And I want to learn more. I fucking love the human experience. I think it's insane how many different types of people there are on Earth, and yet everybody has like this one spirit of consciousness moving through them, but yet we're all so wildly fucking different. That's insane. And I'm going to learn more about that until the day I die, and I'll never have the answers that I ultimately want. But that's fine, because we get closer and then we fucking die, and then we figure it out once we're dead. And we're like, oh shit, we're back in this white light again. Here we go. I feel whole in the sense that my relationships and my friendships are very filling. Like my cup is real full. So I don't feel a driving need to assimilate with a group or an ideology. And I think that allows for a lot more curiosity. I think there are some people who don't have a community and whose relationships and friendships and maybe their work environment or career or whatever is lacking in a big way. And I think they might fill that void with an almost blind allegiance to a certain party or a blind subscription to a certain ideology that gives them meaning and purpose, but in turn doesn't allow them the curiosity to learn about other perspectives that might have thrown them down a different path or given them a broader sense of awareness for different topics and different cultural issues and things like that. So my sense of fullness, my sense of being filled by like being on track with what my mission is in life and why I'm here and what my purpose is, and my sense of absolute fulfillment in my relationships and my friendships, I think allows me to have the curiosity to learn about a bunch of different shit, because I don't feel like I'm lacking in community or identity. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yet still,
I think you're touching on something really important, that if people don't have good friends, you become way more susceptible to dangerous ideologies.
Totally. Yeah. And that's not to say I don't have like a ton of shit I'm working on. You know, I'm working on a lot of shit. I got a lot of problems. But
That's why we get into the spirituality shit in the first place.
Totally.
Right?
But you know, I blame DEI for all my problems,
Yeah.
and then it's fine. But yeah, I think that's just my
99 problems in DI.
and
DEI way
DEI is
one.
number one.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, that sense of feeling whole is something that a lot of people lack, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. You can do a whole podcast series on that, and I'm sure people have, but the number one thing I think people lack today is community.
Yeah. What's the thing that constantly comes up and you're like, God damn, why am I still fucked up?
Oh God.
What's your block?
Yeah, it's you know, in the career of entertainment and like being an artist and an independent creator in whatever form that is, there's this constant negative self-talk. There's the ever looming trap of comparison with others. There's toxic traits of feeling imposter syndrome. Like, I'm not really that guy. I'm not really going to do this forever. I don't think I'm that good, and da-da-da-da-da. And I wrestle with that a lot, and I talk to people about it a lot, and I think about it a lot, and I have my own practices to try and chip away at that, you know, as much as I can. And I think it's a human thing. I think it happens for a lot of people, not just in entertainment, you know, in any position. I think I'm not just speaking about like actors and creators, but I think it's probably.
Do you think it's more acute? Do you think it's more acute for actors and entertainers? Acute, like that pain of like being a fraud, that pain of negative self-talk. Like, do you think that shows up? Do you think that is like, I often think there's this doc on North Korea. I forget the name of it, but it was on the North Korean, that big fucking parade that they put on every few years.
Yeah.
And they showed in the homes of some of the performers in North Korea, because it's all government housing, there are these speakers in the kitchen with government propaganda coming through the speakers, and you can't turn off the speakers.
Yep.
Right? And I think of that as like my negative self-talk.
Totally.
Is like this speaker in the kitchen that I just can't turn off. I'm like, fuck,
that's
just
it.
stop. I've
100%.
heard it before.
Yeah, totally.
It's Kim Jong-un just shouting
you have your
shit.
own Kim Jong-un.
Yeah. You're not good enough, Kyle.
That idea sucks.
Yeah.
You're not getting followers this month for a reason.
You should give up.
Yeah, totally.
Your best is behind you.
yeah. I mean, that's what it is. And people really fall into that. And I don't know, I'm sure a psychologist could break it down much better than I could. It might be some code that's written into our DNA that allows us to survive by being in a constant state of fear, so that we can protect ourselves from taking a big risk that might end up in failure, and then we can't like eat or procreate. You know, and that might be like a very inherent part of our wiring. Yeah. But overcoming that gives you the opportunity to succeed in that bigger endeavor, and to succeed when you take that bigger risk, and to actually become more prepared, so that risk turns into less of a risk and more of just a step in the right direction. And that's what I'm constantly working on.
Has your self-talk gotten better over the years?
Yeah.
How?
Because I have different practices that I put into place when I fall into those moments, or when I start to have that. And
actually, I'm just remembering a bit you did where you're like, Joe Rogan will never be your friend. It's like the negative affirmations in the mirror.
Yeah,
it's fucking great.
My friend, do you know who Aubrey Marcus is?
I do. I know Aubrey.
Oh, great. Yeah. So he's working on a
Aubrey and Kyle Kingsbury. You know,
Kyle.
Kyle,
I was just with them for a week
at
their thing. They're great. So he's working on a book right now, all about the anti-you. And it kind of falls into that realm of like this darkness that's always with you, that you think is you, but it's not you. It's a separate you. And I'm sure I butchered that, but he can explain it better. But anyways, to answer your question, there's different practices I have. One of the things that has stuck with me for a long time is something somebody said. I don't know if it was my therapist friend or somebody else, but they said, when you get that negative voice in your head, it's not you. You treat that voice as like a house guest. House guests come and then they leave. At some point, they're gone. And if you can separate yourself from that voice and from that darkness and from that negativity, then it just becomes like a silly thing that's inside your head and inside your body.
Yeah.
And you can look at it from an outside perspective, and you can acknowledge it without like keeping it, without offering it a bed, without changing the covers so that it feels comfortable.
Yeah.
You just watch it. You feel like, damn, I have this thing inside my head right now while the fucking voice is running.
Yeah.
And then eventually it's gone, you know? And there's other things. You meditate, you do sauna or breath work or whatever. There's a journal. A lot of people have different physical practices that they do, but one of my practices is that mental one, which is separating myself and viewing it as just a guest. I think it might have been Tony Robbins. I forget.
Yeah.
But yeah.
He has some good stuff to say. Yeah. The latest thing that I've done to try and grapple with that monster is realizing that there are times of day when the voice comes on more prevalently. Like in the afternoon after a big lunch, all of a sudden I get depressed.
Really?
And I'm like, fuck again. But if I know like, okay, voice is coming in now, it's 3:30 p.m.
Yeah.
I can like armor myself for it and be like, okay, it's time to go for a walk, because if you try and write right now, you're going to feel like a total failure.
Totally.
It's like, I know now what time of day the house guest is coming over.
Totally.
But
That's awesome.
But it helps, because at my worst, it feels like depressive thoughts feel so broad. Like the statements about the self are not like, oh, right now this thing is happening. It's like, you've always been a failure.
Right.
Which is just, so it anything I can do to manage like timing of it. Like, okay, it's going to come in right now. And I think it goes back to doing the Excel sheet of like, okay, well, here's evidence to the positive mind of like, I've been exercising this much. Like, look, there's evidence that there's good stuff. And then someone says something funny, you see something makes you laugh, and then it's like, poof, the voice is gone.
Yep.
It's amazing to me how quickly it can come and go.
Yep.
And how quickly just something like one funny thought can evaporate it.
Totally. And for some people, it's really, really hard. For some people, it's actually more comfortable to be in that negative state because it's safe there. You don't have to do anything.
Well, it's certain,
and nothing is your fault either.
Right.
And that negative voice starts blaming other people or other ways. Starts blaming like what did I just had it in my head, and then the negative voice came in and said, "You're not going to fucking deliver this, right?" But there's a certain comfort in being in a negative headspace because nothing is your fault and you don't have to do anything.
Sure. Yeah.
And I've been there before for long stretches of time. For sure.
Yeah. Well, it's great that I think it's the best thing about spirituality going mainstream is that it is giving people a lot of tools to overcome what previous generations just dealt with alcoholism and violence.
Yeah.
It's not like people didn't have the negative voices in the past. They would just like beat their wives. And be like, this is making me feel better. Right?
Totally.
Now we journal.
Yeah. Now we breathe through our nose and out through our mouth.
Yeah. I really do. I mean, I do think there was a lot of wisdom in the 1960s hippies movement. Yeah. Right. But it was seen as a leftist thing, and it took a long time for people to be like, like maybe breathing isn't political.
Right. Right.
So that's really cool. I want to ask about the Kamala accents bit.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You did a sketch on all the accents that Kamala does when she's giving different speeches. Did that take me through that from ideation to execution? So, and what I'm getting at here is, do you tend to come up with an idea that you will then perform on stage and then turn into a sketch? Does it go the other way around? Is there a kind of a process from ideation to execution, given that you're operating in multiple mediums?
Sure.
You're doing stand-up and then you're doing video sketches. So do you have decisions for like which idea you'll allocate to different mediums?
Goes both ways.
Okay.
I do bisexual bits.
Yeah.
They go both ways.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it varies so much. I can't even give like a definitive answer because sometimes I'll have an idea and I'll really think, well, should I do this as a bit? Should I do it as a video? And I usually pick one or the other. And then sometimes the theme of a video will get turned into a stand-up bit.
Okay.
So I'll do like a, some biohackers on a first date, right? We did this, me and my friend Nikki Howard did this biohackers on a first date video. It exploded. And the theme was these two people who won't stop biohacking while they're on a date and that, and all the little things that you can do in regular conversation. And so I kept thinking on that and it turned into me making a joke on stage about how crazy biohacking is in general. And I started talking about cold plunges being painful and how I want to be a biohacking parent one day and do a cold plunge birth, fucking have my baby come into the world with no inflammation. Like that's the bit now.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't,
has that been recorded and put out?
I did it at the MUD WTR show, but the audio recording wasn't great. So I don't know. I don't think I can put that out.
Yeah.
It's a good one though.
It's
It'll come out soon. I'll get it somewhere else.
Yeah.
So, it's tough to do exact jokes from videos to stand-up and from stand-up to videos because just the medium is different. But thematically, I go back and forth quite a bit.
Okay.
And then sometimes I will take a character from a video and do it on stage. And sometimes I will take one-liner joke. It's such a variation, and it depends on a lot of factors. But the Kamala accent video, so there's a fundamental principle in improv comedy called yes and, which is, for those who don't know, if you're in a scene with your improv partner and they say something, you are to agree with it and add to it. It's a positive. You yes and it. So if I were to tell you, hey, Kyle, I woke up this morning and your Jaguar was in my bed again.
Yes and is part of the DEI initiative.
You wouldn't be like,
Right.
I don't own a Jaguar.
Right.
You wouldn't be like, what? Like that's a no, but
Sure.
Right? What you might say is, yeah, he really likes to sleep next to you more than me. Or you might say, yeah, my pet rhino is taking up too much space in my bed, so he had to move. So you're agreeing and you're heightening. And I take that into a lot of the shit that I do. And with the Kamala accent video, this chick made like 3 accents, and she's got like decent accent work. I've been acting for 10 years. I can't do as many accents as she can do. And she was doing all these accents on the campaign trail, and it was so absurd and like gross. And I just kept thinking, like, what is
she
the
even
yes
did like
and for
the
this?
head nodding in Kentucky, I think. Like there's a little like,
or a little like, we gonna do it. And so I don't think to myself, what is the yes and of that? But to me, after 10, 12 years of doing this, it's kind of naturally ingrained in my body to subconsciously yes and something that I think is funny. So the idea was how the yes and heightening for that was, what other accents would she do? And that's where I got the run of the video. And I think I added like I think I added the Borat accent and like that she was going to do next, and some other ones too. But yeah, that's how that one came to life.
Does the Trump accent.
Yeah, the Trump accent. Yeah.
What do you have a writing process?
A bit, yeah, it's loose, but if I have an idea, I put it in my phone immediately.
In Notes app?
Yeah,
or?
Notes app.
Okay.
I got a note for video ideas and a note for stand-up ideas.
Okay.
And then
Where does it go from there?
from there, I'll set like a writing session for myself for like either 30 minutes or an hour at home, and I'll go through the notes.
Do you have a clock? Do you have a timer?
I just look at the clock.
Oh, I'm gonna get you a timer.
I know,
you
timer's
can
good.
Get to real psychopath
But
mode.
I do like not scroll through TikTok or Instagram or anything during that.
Okay,
So
it's off.
Yeah, it's off, and I just keep an eye on the clock, and sometimes I'll go longer. But
And are you writing in essay form and then whittling it down to the funniest lines?
No, Seinfeld has a process, I think, where or at least he used to set his timer for 20 minutes and free write, and then he'd go back and highlight anything he thought was funny and then put that on a new page and write that out. My process is more, I'll write, kind of free write, I'll stop, I'll talk to myself, I might stand up in my office and walk around, I might put on a wig and look in the mirror and just start like I come from that character
Sure.
sketch area, so I'll try to like embody what that character is like. And I'll just free write jokes, one-liners, puzzle piece things around until it resembles a cohesive sketch, and then now I have a video.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or a stand-up bit.
Or a bit, yeah. With a stand-up bit, it's a little different. With stand-up, I write a lot on stage now, so I'll freestyle a lot.
Okay.
And I'll just kind of talk things out a lot, in addition to writing at home. So I might have a topic and a couple of one-liners written out for that topic, and then on stage, I'll start talking about it and kind of see what comes. And
Okay.
I'll record it, listen to it back, and write it down from there.
And then you'll write it down after the set. So you'll have a few punchlines that you know about. Okay, let's say the Kamala accents bit was a stand-up bit. You can be like, okay, I'm going to do the Kentucky bit. I'm going to do the Asian bit, or I mean the Asian accent, and then you'll go back from there and then tighten it up with a new round of writing.
Yeah, and these days I don't actually write a ton on paper for stand-up. I'll write notes and bullet points for stand-up, and then I'll freestyle a lot and adjust the notes and bullet points. But I don't write pages worth of stand-up anymore. Yeah.
How often are you performing?
I've taken a bit of a step back from touring this year to focus on a couple of bigger projects in the TV film space. But last year I was on the road 15 days a month, so a lot. Opening for people, doing my own one-nighter shows or weekends at clubs, colleges, and festivals, things like that.
And then do you have a spot in Austin that you work out your new material?
I'm just starting to get into the Austin scene.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I'm very much in the LA world still.
You're new there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. You mentioned in your Consciousness Bro
Oh, did you
special.
watch it?
I did. It was
Conscious
great.
Bro? Cool.
Yeah, Conscious Bro. About, you mentioned doing ayahuasca. What was that like?
Well, the first rule of doing ayahuasca is you have to tell everybody.
Of course,
that
yeah.
you've done ayahuasca.
Yeah, and even while you're on the trip, you're like, damn, this is going to be a good story.
I've been waiting for you to ask me about ayahuasca.
I was thinking about opening with that.
Well, I was thinking about just answering every question with,
yeah.
well, when I did ayahuasca.
Yeah. It's a lot like ayahuasca. You know, improv is a lot like ayahuasca, where you got a yes and the jaguar.
Thank you for asking me that question about politics. In my ayahuasca experience.
People ask me about these beads a lot.
I don't know if you noticed the beads, but they're from my
What time is it?
trip.
Eternity.
That's funny.
Thanks.
Just about it. Yeah, I've sat in a couple of ayahuasca ceremonies over the past couple of years, and to me, it's a crazy experience. It's insane. It's something that deserves like the ultimate amount of respect, and it's been around for a very long time and practiced by a lot of people who have kind of stewarded the practice and ceremonial elements of it forward in a really conscious way. And I think some people abuse it, and I think some people pretend to be the all-knowing, representatives of what ayahuasca can do for you.
Sure.
And
it only takes 3 sessions.
Right.
Yeah. And probably even the first, if you have a good first session, you can gain that kind of confidence.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Dude, I went on a retreat to Costa Rica, and there was a guy in the group who, after like 2 sessions, he was talking to the facilitators about how he could work there because he thinks he thinks he gets it now, and I mean that's the case with a lot of spiritual practices. But
I interviewed Jim Fadiman once, who's kind of like he's the godfather of the microdosing movement. He was around in the 60s, really like popularized the idea of microdosing. And we talked about the God complex that can come from psychedelics. And he says, whenever someone has a big psychedelic experience and they come back and they say, I did mushrooms and found out that I was God, I always ask, am I God too?
Right. That's funny.
Because it can go both ways.
Yeah.
You can destroy your ego, or you can inflate it.
100%. And I see a lot more of the inflating happen.
I wonder if it's because of the context of such a narcissistic society.
Yeah. Well,
right?
let me rephrase that, because when you say destroy your ego, you don't mean like
I don't mean like
yourself are all fucked up. You mean
no,
you actually
I just
got
mean
some
you
good help from
yeah,
it.
you're able
then
to.
I flip that. I've seen less of the people coming out of it with inflated egos than I have with people getting real help in a big way. But it's still very noticeable when I meet somebody who thinks that they are the plant medicine god now.
Yeah, they're long huggers.
Yeah, and it's not a ton of people, but it is.
Yeah.
It is.
You're
The long hard huggers.
doing the 10-second hug.
Totally,
Fuck.
totally.
This guy thinks he's God.
But yeah, to me, it's a tool. It's a tool, just like breath work is a tool, just like super healthy diet is a tool, just like meditation or journaling is a tool. It's a tool. It's a very extreme tool. I would never recommend anyone to do it. I will recommend every single person research it and understand it and broaden your awareness of what it is, how it's used, and where it comes from. Because if used properly by the right person who is aligned with it, it can be an incredible tool. It really can be. Yeah.
Do you follow Neil Brennan at all?
Yeah, I like Neil.
He's talked a lot about what ayahuasca has done for him. I don't know him personally, but I've listened to his podcast for years.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable to see how his tone has changed over the past 5 years. And he attributes it to ayahuasca. It really is remarkable to see someone like just listening to someone over the years to be like, wow, you have a way different outlook as a result of this.
Totally.
But he's also a habits guy. He says he does a gratitude checklist 4 times a day.
Wow.
4 times a day he'll write down something he's grateful for.
4 times a day.
That's what he says. Because he says his brain has such a negativity bias that he needs that.
Sure. Yeah.
So what did ayahuasca do for you?
A lot, but I'll give you one thing. Every time I've sat in an ayahuasca ceremony, I leave with just a much clearer sense of self and how and what my part is in the universe. And it's kind of a big picture thing. We'd have to talk for hours to get into the real detailed experience, but for me it's connected me to who I truly am and kind of melted off the mask that I've worn in a lot of parts of my life. We all kind of have a skin that we put on from time to time, whether it's in a business relationship or a romantic relationship, or meeting people for the first time, or speaking in public, or sometimes we fall into the expectations of others, and we kind of create this skin on the outside that matches what we think the expectation is coming from other people. And I've had a few different experiences sitting with ayahuasca that kind of melted that off and allowed me to really consider the moments where I do that. And that's in turn helped me connect with who I really am and what I really want to be doing with the next 6 decades of my life, if I'm so lucky, and how that how that purpose and forward inertia plays into the forward inertia of the universe in general on the smallest scale, which is being a human. And then you step out and you're in the United States. Then you step out and you're in the world. And then you step out and you're in the solar system, and then the galaxy, and then the universe itself. And so every action you do kind of reverberates outward and adds to the overall energy of this collective consciousness that we all operate in.
Those beads are really working.
And that's fuck, you got me back in the zone, dude. And so I've felt that on a real level, and it's helped really craft a perspective toward what I want to be doing and what makes me happy.
That's great, man.
Yeah,
that's great.
You ever done ayahuasca?
I have. Yeah, I've done it maybe a dozen.
Cool. Well, let me tell you about the time
I can tell you the second time that you did it. You've really been monopolizing this. The first rule is you need to tell everyone you know about ayahuasca. The second rule is you need to be ready for them to tell you about. Right. And the
third rule is interrupt them and make it about you.
There's a great New Yorker cartoon that it's 2 people and one says, that sounds exactly like the thing I was waiting to say. It was like. Or wait, no, what is it? It's like, that sounds, it's like, that sounds like the thing I was going to say regardless. That's the
funny.
bit.
That's funny.
That's great, man. Last little bit, have you, did you ever see the George Carlin doc? It's a 2-part series.
Judd Apatow. Yeah.
There's a part in it towards the end where he is getting really dark with his comedy. and very cynical. And he says something along the lines of, you can't be really funny and also care about the world. Like, and I don't know that's true. I wonder if that's true.
I wonder why he said that. Do we know? Is there an explanation?
I don't know.
You can't be really funny and also...
and care about what happens. I think that's the way he put it. You can't be really funny and also care about what happens.
Because if you care about what happens a lot, then you'll be more serious.
Or too earnest or something. I don't know. Because, what's your take on that?
You can't be really funny and also care about what happens. I don't know. That's a really interesting thing to say. I want to just say you can be, because I think you can be really funny and also care about what happens. But can you care without like taking active action beyond just being funny? Because being funny, trying to offer humor toward a situation, doesn't mean you don't care. I think if you're offering humor towards a situation, that's one of the ultimate signs that you do really care. Because humor is such a great lens to see the truth about something. And if you're using humor in a way to expose truth, then you care enough to use your tool to offer a perspective of truth. So I don't agree with that, I guess, would be my answer. Did that make sense?
It does. Yeah, I grapple with that because I'm always afraid of coming across as too earnest, which is a very earnest thing to say.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a cynical part of me that is afraid of coming across as eye-rolly. Yeah. You know, in the way that I am and speak and write and like do my thing. But I care. I do care what happens. Yeah. And I do think that humor is an act of wanting to change the tone of something. Yeah. Lighten up the tone to a situation. That does a tremendous amount. And why would you spend your time working out how to make it funny if you didn't care about the thing? But I see that in you, and I appreciated it. Like, I appreciated watching you up there and be like, fuck yeah, this guy's got a great tone, and he's making fun of it all. Yeah. But it's not mean-spirited or cynical. Yeah.
I think I care a lot.
Yeah.
But I hope I'm funny, too.
Yeah.
So I hope that I'm an example of why that's wrong, but I would love an extrapolation from him.
Right. I think it also kind of goes to the idea or the cliche that like you need to be depressed to be funny.
Chris Rock had a great quote once where he said, if the reason a lot of comics are fucked up is, the phrase ignorance is bliss, right? Well, what's the opposite of ignorance? All knowing, like all understanding. And what's the opposite of bliss? Pain, right? So if you know everything, you're always in pain. You're always sad. And comedians have the ability to see everything from an external spot and have this bigger understanding of the bigger picture, and that allows us to comment on things in a way that's unbiased but just as a reflection. And that's why a lot of comics are so dark and fucked up.
Goddamn, Chris Rock.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
But like,
good.
I'm a pretty happy guy.
Yeah.
So
keep being happy. Be the exception to the rule, man.
I'm trying, dude.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. People can check out your special on YouTube,
Conscious Bro. Type it in.
Conscious Bro. Anywhere else you want people to keep following you on your journey?
I'm performing in Irvine on March 12th. I don't know when this comes out, but March 12th in Irvine at the Improv, BrentPella.com/shows. And at Brent Pella on all the social channels, and new videos pretty much every day.
Keep it up, man.
We're cruising. Appreciate you, dude.
Keep up those Excel sheets.
Yeah, thanks, bro. I will. I'll keep doing ayahuasca for breakfast.
Right. Brent Pella, everyone. Thank you.